Right now, at this exact moment, intelligence agencies across the Western world are scrambling to verify what just happened behind closed doors in Beijing. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, reportedly held a secret summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The Pentagon claims they tracked unusual diplomatic movements. Tehran says the meeting never happened. Beijing refuses to comment, but satellite imagery from commercial providers shows Khamenei's presidential aircraft on the tarmac at Beijing Capital International Airport for exactly 72 hours last week. Two authoritative sources, contradictory statements. One of them is lying about what could be the most consequential geopolitical realignment since the fall of the Soviet Union. Let me walk you through exactly what happened and why this changes everything about the balance of power in the Middle East and beyond. On February 28, 2026, at approximately 0300 hours local time, an Iranian Il-96-300 presidential transport aircraft departed Tehran's Mehrabad International Airport on an unusual flight path. Instead of the typical route to Moscow or Damascus that Khamenei's aircraft normally follows, this plane headed northeast across Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan directly toward Chinese airspace. According to flight tracking data from multiple commercial aviation monitoring services, the aircraft transmitted intermittent transponder signals consistent with diplomatic protocols requiring reduced visibility. By 0900 hours on March 1st, Western intelligence satellites detected the Il-96 on the ground at a restricted military section of Beijing Capital International Airport, the same facility typically reserved for state visits requiring maximum security. For the next 72 hours, the aircraft remained stationary. During this window, according to sources within the U.S. intelligence community, speaking on condition of anonymity, Chinese state security forces established a 20-kilometer no-fly zone around central Beijing and deployed additional security personnel to the Diaoyutai State Guest House, the facility where China hosts its most sensitive diplomatic engagements. On March 3rd at 1400 hours local time, the same Il-96 departed Beijing, flew directly back across Central Asia, and landed in Tehran at 2100 hours the same day. Total time on ground in China, exactly 72 hours. Total public acknowledgement from any official source, 0 statements. But here's what makes this unprecedented. Khamenei, who is 84 years old and rarely travels beyond Iran's borders except for brief visits to neighboring countries, has never before made an unannounced trip to China. His last confirmed visit to Beijing was in 1989, 37 years ago, when he was president under Ayatollah Khamenei. To understand why this secret meeting matters so profoundly, you need to understand what China has been building in Iran for the past 5 years. In March 2021, Iran and China signed a 25-year comprehensive strategic partnership agreement worth an estimated $400 billion. That agreement included Chinese investment in Iranian infrastructure, energy sector development, telecommunications networks, and what Western intelligence agencies describe as dual-use technology with military applications. But the publicly announced partnership was just the visible layer. According to a classified assessment from the Institute for the Study of War, obtained and reported by the Washington Post last year, China has been systematically embedding technological infrastructure throughout Iran's military command and control systems. This includes advanced radar networks using Chinese CETC electronics, secure communications systems manufactured by Huawei despite international sanctions, and most significantly, real-time satellite intelligence sharing that gives Iran unprecedented visibility over U.S. military movements across the Middle East. The centerpiece of this technological relationship is China's Yaogan reconnaissance satellite constellation. These satellites provide synthetic aperture radar imaging capable of tracking naval vessels in all weather conditions with resolution sufficient to identify specific ship classes. The constellation includes over 30 operational satellites in low Earth orbit, providing revisit times of less than 6 hours over critical maritime choke points, including the Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and the entire Persian Gulf operational area. According to Dr. Thomas Shugart, Adjunct Senior Fellow at the Center for a New American Security and former U.S. Navy submarine warfare officer, China has been providing Iran with targeting data from these satellites since at least 2023. That capability transforms Iran's ballistic missile arsenal from a terror weapon useful primarily against fixed targets into a precision strike system potentially capable of hitting moving aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf. When Iran fired ballistic missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln last month, Western analysts were shocked by the missile's accuracy, despite the carrier's defensive maneuvers. That accuracy didn't come from Iranian technology alone. It came from real-time Chinese satellite tracking data transmitted to Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps targeting centers. But what China provides goes deeper than satellites and communications equipment. According to reports confirmed by Reuters, AFP, and Jane's Defense Weekly, Chinese military advisors have been operating inside Iran for the past 18 months, specifically within Iran's ballistic missile production facilities and its nuclear enrichment sites at Natanz and Fordo. These aren't technical consultants helping with civilian nuclear energy programs. These are People's Liberation Army Strategic Missile Force officers providing expertise on solid-fuel rocket motors, maneuvering re-entry vehicles, and terminal guidance systems. The technology transfers violate multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions and represent a direct challenge to American efforts to contain Iran's military capabilities. Yet China continues providing this support because, from Beijing's perspective, a militarily capable Iran serves multiple strategic objectives simultaneously. Here's the calculation driving Chinese strategy. First, Iran's confrontation with the United States diverts American military resources and attention away from the Indo-Pacific theater, where China faces its own tensions with Taiwan, Japan, and the Philippines. Every carrier strike group, every B-2 bomber, every intelligence asset the United States deploys to the Middle East is one less capability available to counter Chinese actions in the South China Sea or near Taiwan. Second, Iran provides China with leverage over global energy markets. Iran sits on the world's second-largest natural gas reserves and fourth-largest oil reserves. Chinese investment and technological support ensures Beijing maintains preferential access to Iranian hydrocarbons, regardless of international sanctions or regional instability. Third, Iran offers China a testing ground for military technologies and doctrines that Beijing might eventually employ against American forces in the Pacific. When Iran demonstrates the ability to threaten U.S. carriers with ballistic missiles, China learns invaluable lessons about American defensive capabilities and tactical responses. From Iran's perspective, the relationship with China provides exactly what Tehran cannot obtain elsewhere: unconditional military and economic support without the ideological demands that came with Soviet partnership during the Cold War. Russia provides Iran with some advanced weapon systems, particularly the S-400 air defense network and Sukhoi fighter aircraft. But Russia's own military is stretched thin in Ukraine, and Moscow lacks the technological depth and economic resources that China possesses. China offers Iran a development pathway that bypasses Western sanctions entirely, creating parallel economic and technological systems that reduce American leverage to almost zero. According to Karim Sajjadpour, senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and leading Iran analyst, Tehran views China as the only major power capable of balancing American dominance while respecting Iran's independence and not demanding internal political reforms. So what did Khamenei and Xi discuss during those 72 hours in Beijing? Multiple intelligence assessments suggest three primary agenda items, each with profound implications for regional and global security. First, expansion of the technological partnership to include Chinese assistance with Iran's nuclear program, not the civilian energy facilities that Iran claims are its only nuclear activities, but the military enrichment work that Western intelligence agencies believe continues at undeclared sites. Specifically, China may have agreed to provide centrifuge technology and uranium enrichment expertise that would dramatically accelerate Iran's timeline to weapons-grade material production. If confirmed, this would represent China's most direct challenge yet to the international non-proliferation regime and would eliminate any remaining possibility of reviving the 2015 nuclear agreement that President Trump abandoned in 2018. Second, intelligence sharing arrangements that go beyond satellite data to include signals, intelligence, cyber capabilities, and human intelligence networks. China's Ministry of State Security has penetrated communication networks throughout the Middle East and maintains assets across the region. Sharing this intelligence with Iran would give Tehran unprecedented awareness of American, Israeli, and Saudi activities, potentially allowing Iran to preempt strikes against its facilities or leadership. Conversely, Iran's networks inside Afghanistan Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen could provide China with valuable intelligence about American military operations, diplomatic initiatives, and regional political dynamics. This creates an intelligence partnership mirroring the Five Eyes arrangement between the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, but aimed explicitly at countering American interests. Third, and perhaps most explosive, a mutual defense understanding that stops short of a formal treaty, but commits China to supporting Iran in the event of American military action. According to sources familiar with intelligence assessments, this understanding might include Chinese provision of advanced air defense systems, beyond the already supplied equipment, electronic warfare capabilities designed to disrupt American precision-guided munitions, and possibly even Chinese military personnel operating sophisticated defensive systems on Iranian territory. This would fundamentally alter American calculations about striking Iranian nuclear facilities or military infrastructure. Any strike would risk Chinese casualties, potentially triggering a direct confrontation between the United States and China that neither country wants, but that could spiral out of control through miscalculation or accident. The strategic logic driving this partnership reveals how profoundly the international order is fragmenting. For decades, even during intense competition, major powers maintained certain guardrails preventing direct military confrontation. The United States and Soviet Union fought proxy wars but avoided direct engagement. China and America competed economically and technologically but maintained military distance. Those guardrails are eroding. China's willingness to embed its personnel and technology within Iran's military structure, combined with Iran's willingness to become dependent on Chinese support, creates entanglement that increases the risk of unintended escalation. A limited American strike on Iranian nuclear facilities could kill Chinese advisors. Iranian retaliation could target American bases hosting forces preparing to defend Taiwan. What begins as a regional Middle Eastern crisis could rapidly escalate into global confrontation between nuclear-armed superpowers. There are three scenarios for how this partnership evolves, each with distinct probability and implications. Scenario 1. Strategic signaling without fundamental change. Probability 30%. In this pathway, the Khamenei-Xi meeting represents primarily psychological operations designed to deter American military action through ambiguity about Chinese support. China continues providing technology and intelligence to Iran, but stops short of military commitments that would risk direct confrontation with the United States. Iran leverages the perception of Chinese backing to strengthen its regional position while recognizing that Beijing won't actually defend Tehran in a shooting war. This scenario assumes rational calculation on all sides and mutual recognition that the costs of direct great power conflict outweigh any regional interests in Iran. Scenario 2. Graduated escalation with new red lines. Probability 45%. This represents the most likely trajectory where China deepens its military relationship with Iran through incremental steps, each calibrated to remain below the threshold that would trigger American retaliation against Chinese interests. China deploys more advisors, provides more sophisticated technology, and increases intelligence sharing, but always maintains plausible deniability and avoids formal defense commitments. Iran becomes more aggressive in the region, confident in Chinese backing, but careful not to provoke American action so severe that Beijing cannot ignore them. The United States responds with enhanced military presence, increased sanctions, and efforts to counter China-Iran cooperation, but stops short of kinetic strikes that risk Chinese casualties. This creates a new normal of heightened tension and proxy competition without crossing into direct warfare. Scenario 3. Formalized alliance and catastrophic miscalculation. Probability 25%. In this nightmare pathway, China and Iran conclude a formal mutual defense treaty similar to NATO's Article 5 commitment, where an attack on one is treated as an attack on both. This treaty emboldens Iran to take actions it otherwise wouldn't risk, possibly including closing the Strait of Hormuz, attacking Gulf Arab oil facilities, or striking Israeli territory with the assumption that Chinese backing deters American retaliation. But the treaty miscalculates American resolve. When Iran crosses a red line that domestic American politics makes impossible for any president to ignore, the United States strikes Iranian targets despite Chinese warnings. Chinese advisors die in the strikes. Beijing faces a credibility crisis where backing down destroys its reputation as a reliable partner while escalating risks war with America. Within days, cyber attacks escalate, naval vessels clash in international waters, and both sides mobilize forces while searching desperately for off-ramps that preserve face without triggering nuclear exchange. Watch for 5 critical indicators in the next 14 days that will reveal which scenario is materializing. First, Chinese naval movements. If the People's Liberation Army Navy deploys additional vessels to the Indian Ocean or stations warships near the Strait of Hormuz, Beijing is signaling enhanced commitment to Iran beyond current levels. Second, Iran's negotiating posture. If Tehran suddenly becomes more rigid in any remaining diplomatic channels regarding its nuclear program or regional activities, that rigidity likely reflects confidence in Chinese backing. Third, American force positioning. If U.S. Central Command begins forward deploying additional carrier strike groups, bomber task forces, or ground-based missile defense systems to the Middle East, Pentagon planning assumes the China-Iran partnership has reached threatening levels. Fourth, Chinese diplomatic messaging. If foreign ministry spokespersons or state media begin explicitly referencing China's interests in Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity using language similar to what Beijing uses regarding Taiwan, that signals formalization of security commitments. Fifth, economic transactions. If Chinese state-owned banks suddenly increase lending to Iran, or Chinese companies announce major infrastructure investments despite sanctions risks, that indicates Beijing has made strategic decision to prioritize Iran relationship over Western economic ties. I'm tracking this minute by minute through monitoring of satellite imagery, diplomatic reporting, and intelligence community assessments. When the next development breaks, when we learn definitively what agreements Khamenei and Xi reached, when China's next moves become clear, you will understand the implications here first. With the level of analysis mainstream media simply cannot provide, given their format constraints and audience assumptions. Subscribe to this channel right now. Turn on all notifications. This is not optional if you want to understand the most significant geopolitical realignment of the 21st century as it unfolds in real time. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think China will actually defend Iran militarily if the United States strikes Iranian nuclear facilities or military command centers? Do you think this partnership is primarily about containing America or about China's own regional interests and energy security? Do you think we're watching the formation of an anti-American alliance that fundamentally changes global power dynamics? I read every single comment, and these discussions inform my ongoing analysis of this developing situation. The secret meeting happened. The aircraft was tracked. The silence from all parties confirms its profound significance. What Khamenei and Xi agreed behind those closed doors will determine whether the Middle East becomes the flashpoint for direct great power confrontation or merely another theater of carefully managed strategic competition. The next 2 weeks reveal everything. Thanks for watching.